Project management, course time management, also known as schedule management. Topics for today: project schedules and project time management, planning schedule management, define activities, how to estimate the project schedules. We talk about the Gantt chart and about PERT, Program Evaluation Review Technique. Important is that you understand the importance of project schedules and time management, and that you are able to use the tools and the estimation tools and the Gantt chart for planning and tracking schedule information. Let's have a look first at the project management triangle. Reconsider it because we talked about that a lot. This is one model where you can have a look at this project management triangle, where you have scope on the lower left, the time on top, and the budget on right. And in the middle, you usually say in these models that there is quality influenced. If you change one of the three areas and one of the 3 points, then it has influence on the others. So if you adjust the scope, if it gets bigger, then it has influence on timing and on budget. The same for budget and the same for time. So if you lower the budget, then it has influence on time and on scope, same as on quality. So there is some influence. Let's have a look at the other model, which is the devil square picture. So we have 4 right now considered. We build a square of quality, scope, budget, and time. And right now, if you change one of the edges, it has an influence on the others. On the left side, you also consider the risks and the changes, so the change management. Generally, you say if something changes, it has influence on one of the other edges. What is time or schedule management? The idea is that you want to bring all the activities in a specific and a feasible execution order, and also you want to provide estimations for that. Organize it, bring it in an order, and put it on a time schedule to have an idea when are you going to do what. Another goal is to optimize productivity and the success. And you can do this by these multiple processes which are involved in the schedule or time management process. First one is plan schedule management. So planning schedule management is one of the first processes. The next one is defining activities. The third one is sequence the activities. So bring the activities in a specific order. Then you estimate the activity resources. So how many resources do I need for my activities? You estimate the activity durations, and you develop the schedule. You do a specific amount of planning in the beginning, so these activities will be usually done at the beginning, but also you come back to these and re-estimate, for example, or resequence the activities. While the project is running, you control the schedule. So are we still on track? Are there any changes? Do we need to consider something? This is what you have to do. And what is the influence then? Remember the triangle. If the schedule, the timing changes, what is the influence on the other? What is the influence on costs? What's the influence on quality? Or what is the influence on the scope? Planning schedule management. So what is it all about? This involves generally how you plan, manage, and control the project to your specific schedule baseline and how you will manage schedule variances. So you need to document the policies, the procedures, general documentation for planning, executing, controlling the project schedule. In the end, what comes out is a written piece of paper where you have written down your approach. And of course, you are influenced by the type of project lifecycle and development approach, which was agreed on during the developed project management process. So you ask questions like who's involved in schedule planning, what process will be followed to make the schedule, which tooling, how to track, and of course there are any systems or procedures you have to use or follow in my company. So are there any which I can use? Are there existing templates or systems? And how are you going to do this planning schedule management? Your team is usually you do it in a team with expert, so-called expert judgment. You use some analytical techniques and you do meetings with your team to develop the schedule management plan. So the schedule management plan is a how-to plan. So how am I going to do this? And you answer all these questions which are mentioned earlier. So the plan consists of several things. So first of all, project schedule model development. What model are you going to use? What methodology are you going to use? So are you going to use a specific methodology using a Gantt chart or whatever? So you put in your level of accuracy and units of measure. So how are you going to measure? How are you going to measure and how precise you are? You put control thresholds in there. For example, you can write down that if you have estimations or if you have monitoring, then if you are plus minus 1 day when controlling the schedule, that you don't take any action, for example. You write about rules of performance measurement, so how to measure your performance and when to measure the performance. And you also describe how the report formats will look like. You describe also your specific process in your project. The next step is defining your activities. And by defining your activities, first of all, let's have a look what an activity or task is. It is generally an element of work, and you can find it in a WBS. So it's on the work breakdown structure, because when you're defining your scope and put it in a WBS, you want to have these activities actually defined. It has an expected duration, it has a cost, and it has resource requirements. So when defining your activities, you can get a more detailed work breakdown structure. So you can actually put even more levels to the work breakdown structure. So you can break it actually more down. So for example, you can have create front-end design as item on your work breakdown structure, and you can probably make further activities which may belong to that. For example, choose front-end framework, make first front-end prototype, set up development environment, and so forth. These tasks are now so small that they can be estimated and that you can really work on these. When you define your activities, you should understand all the work which needs to be done. So not only you, but also your project team. And the main goal of this process is to have realistic cost and duration estimates. The outcome of this process is a list of all activities. And of course, usually the work breakdown structure will be updated as well. As said before, what comes out? Activity lists and the so-called activity attributes. There are more information in these attributes per activity. For example, what are the predecessors? What are the successors? Are there any logical relationships? What about leads and lags, resource requirements, constraints, imposed dates, assumptions, and so forth? So now we have all the activities. We have an updated work breakdown structure. So we know which activities right now we have to do. Let's have quickly a look on milestones. So we heard about milestones a lot, and the question is right now, so we know a lot of tasks and we need to put it somehow on the schedule, so on the timeline. And if we look at milestone, the first thing is, what is it? So generally a milestone is a significant event, and this event has no duration. So it's defined that it has really no duration. So you generally say you take multiple activities and it takes a lot of work to complete or to reach this specific milestone. And then you can ask, okay, you can think of milestones which are placed nearby the streets. So you reach a specific milestone, and the question is, okay, what is it for? Why defining these milestones? And yeah, if you look on the streets, a milestone on the street, if you reach a specific milestone, you know that you are such and such far. So you reached a specific goal, and this is, of course, also the idea about that. Why defining milestones? You set a schedule goal, and the really big benefit of defining milestones is you can easily monitor the progress on a high level basis. And that's a very, very good thing. For example, what could be a milestone is obtain a customer sign off on a specific key document. Yeah, so what is a lot of work to prepare this document, a lot of work to negotiate and so forth. And you reached right now this sign off, the customer really signed that. This is a predefined milestone. You reached that, and you can nicely monitor that you reached it. So let's have a look. Milestone or activity. So create an admin page design. Is this now a milestone or more an activity? An activity, because you have really work to do here, and this is not such a huge amount of work. This is no specific point in time. This describes an activity. End of design phase. This is a milestone. So you can think of, you define a phase and you say, okay, when I reach the end of the phase, this is really a huge effort I took for that, and this is a definition of a milestone. Research front-end frameworks. This is an activity. Integration test. User login. Activity. Prototype delivery. Milestone. So you invest a lot of time to that. Multiple tasks and activities can be involved in that, and finally you deliver. Milestone. A go live. Very clear milestone. So you really delivered your project, your application. This is now online, and this is a milestone. Activity duration estimation. So now the idea is I need to estimate how long do my activities take. So the duration includes the actual amount of time worked on an activity. So there's a difference between the time it takes to do it and the really duration. Yeah, so it is the time worked on that plus the elapsed time, because there can be some waiting time in between. There can be work time on other activities. And this is also you generally have to consider. So there's a difference between the work it really takes and the duration it takes. The effort is the number of workdays or work hours required to complete that. So it's not normally the equals the duration. So again, effort is if I work without disturbing on a specific task, it takes 8 hours. But if I do several other things, or if I have waiting time in between, it can take 13 or 20 hours. So people doing the work should actually help to create these estimates. So not only the project manager should do the estimates, but an expert should at least help with that or should review them. How can you estimate? You say generally a 3-point estimate. That is a pretty nice one. This is often better than having only one number. So you give a 3-point estimate. So not only saying, okay, it takes 5 days. So, but you say, okay, could take 5 days, could take 10 days, or could actually, if a lot of things go wrong, it could take 20 days. This is often better than one number. You get an optimistic approach, so just 2 days, most likely 5 days, and pessimistic estimate 10 days. These 3-point estimates you also need for PERT and Monte Carlo simulations. We will talk about PERT in another lecture. Developing the schedule. It uses results of other time management processes, so you determine the start and end date of the project. This is the idea of why developing the schedule. So you put all your activities in the schedule, you have a start of the project, and by putting all the estimated activities on a schedule, you automatically have an end date by developing that. The main goal is to have a realistic project schedule. And the important tools and techniques for doing this are the well-known Gantt charts, critical path analysis, and critical chain scheduling. We talked about critical path in a previous session, and PERT analysis. We talk about PERT estimation in another session, but we will not do a complete PERT analysis. Usually you have an end date given for the project by sponsors or by management, but remember the time constraint. However, you need to estimate a realistic start and end date, and even further, provide a realistic plan with all the information you have. Let's have a look. Developing the Gantt chart, let's have a look. Developing the schedule with a Gantt chart. On the left, there's an example Gantt chart, and you see a Gantt chart is like a combination. Usually these tools combine the work breakdown structure with the Gantt chart. On the left, you see the work breakdown structure, and then you see on the right chart on the right side your schedule as a Gantt chart. So you have summary tasks in your Gantt chart. You have individual taskbars, so you can easily see what the duration of your task is. And important is here, this is the duration and not the effort. And you have milestones defined. So you see interesting milestones over here. So kind of a release, something is released, so project is announced. These are really milestones. The definition of a Gantt chart is standard format for displaying project schedules, and they are doing this by listing project activities and their corresponding start and finishing dates in a calendar format. So you can easily see it on the schedule in calendar form. So we have several symbols. We have seen this before. Black diamond, this is a diamond. We have thick black bars, summary task, and we have lighter horizontal bars, duration of the task, and the arrows show the dependencies between the tasks. So this task has to be finished before the other thing starts. Schedule control suggestions should important is really to check the schedules, so the reality on the schedules. So you want to do realistic schedules. So this is not a good idea to have unrealistic ones. Take the help from your team to get to a realistic plan. Important is to also plan contingencies in there. This belongs to making realistic plans. Don't plan for everybody to work at 100% capacity all the time. So this is pretty unrealistic that people are working for 100% with full power on your project. Just a rule of thumb, generally it's a good idea to plan for not more than 60% of the total time of the people. Why that? Well, pretty much unknown things happen during the work time. And this is actually how you can plan this contingency in. Hold progress meetings with stakeholders and be clear and honest in communicating schedule issues. This is also highly related to make realistic schedules. And if you're doing realistic schedules and if you're not cheating in making the schedules, then you should and you can communicate clear and honest to the management. The next process step is controlling the schedule. So while you are doing actually your project, so while the work is really done, you need to control the schedule. And the goals are, you want to know what is the status. Yeah, so you check your baseline, your previous plan, and you have a look. So what is the current status? So am I still on track? So you want to know the influence factors. So you want to see what are what can cause schedule changes. So was the schedule really changed, and what was the cause of that? Determine the schedule changes, and then of course manage these changes. Again, remember the triangle or the double square. If for some reason you are late in your schedule for some one or multiple activities, and you find it out when you're controlling the schedule, then you must or you can find out the root cause of that. So where is it coming from? Why did that happen? And this is a good idea to do that. And if there is a change in schedule, it will have usually an influence on maybe other things like costs or like on scope. For example, you are late due to some unknown issues which occurred, so you haven't considered that, but you must hold your deadline in the end. You need to change the scope, otherwise you cannot hold the deadline, or you need to lower the quality, otherwise you cannot hold the deadline. So these are the consequences, and you should and must manage that. For controlling the schedule, what are the tools and techniques? So usually use progress reports. Inform your team, your management. You have or you can have a schedule change control system. Many companies have project management software which schedule comparison charts like tracking Gantt chart. So usually if you use well-known Gantt chart tools, you can really check the baseline against a specific change and see what the differences are. You can use things like variance analysis, such as analyzing the float or the slack, performance management, for example, such as earned value analysis. Working with people issues. So if you have issues, it is important that you have a strong leadership. Strong leadership helps project success more than super good PERT charts. That's very important. Yes, it is nice to have a good skill in making nice Gantt charts, making nice PERT estimations, and so forth. But if you are a strong leader, this helps in your project, and this will lead to a good performing project team. So project managers, and again, yes, They need to have skills in the processes and tools for project managing. That's for sure. That's why we're doing this course. But they should use empowerment. So they need to empower their team. They need some kind of incentives, but they also need discipline. They need negotiation skills. Yeah, so they need to negotiate, for example, the scope, or will negotiate with the customer or the management. Thank you very much. This was Time Schedule Management. See you and bye bye.